Hey everybody, welcome to episode 22. Today I'm going to go back to the X-Men comics, and I'm going to do Fall of the Mutants. Unfortunately, I don't have any of my physical Fall of the Mutants anymore. I sold them in one kind of big pack. One of the reasons why is I sold the 3 X-Men comics, the 3 X-Factor comics, and the 3 New Mutants comics in one big pack. The first appearance of Apocalypse is in one of the X-Factor comics, so it's pretty pricey, so it made the set kind of go for a lot. And then just as a consequence, I packed the whole thing together and asked pretty high price, and I got it, so I ended up selling my original copy. I have, of course, the Essentials guides, have the black and whites, and I've got the PDFs in the milestone or in the actual comics themselves. I'm going to focus today primarily, though, on the 3 X-Men issues. I'm just going to gloss over the X-Factor issues and the New Mutants issues, but just kind of primarily focus on the 3 X-Men issues. So let's go into that. Again, first I'm going to show you the milestone here. One cool thing is I was trying to find a copy of the advertisement, but the advertisement had this image on it where they're all, laying out here. And I always thought that was cool. That's what kind of drew my attention. It's an Alan Davis piece, and I just thought that was neat. When I saw the poster, I was like, oh, all the X-Men are dead. And that's what I thought originally. This is the Fall of the Mutants. It's very dramatic, and this, like I said, this is really the first actually promoted crossover. Like I said, I don't believe that Mutant Massacre was promoted as a crossover per se. It just kind of happened organically. So this one is the first one that they had posters out at like the comic shops or or wherever. I think actually this poster was at, I want to say it was 87, I believe. I'll double check that. Pretty sure it's 87. I think they had it at I want to say Rochester Book Center, because I know that the Comics Corner near my house, or near the trailer park, it wasn't open yet. I think Kay, when I talked about Kay's Book Exchange, I think she might have had the poster hung up on her wall over the comics. But I know I'd seen this. And my sister was out of University of Michigan by this time. Of course, she might still be there. I can't remember exactly when this came out. We'll look at the dates as far as the months, which are not always exact, but they're pretty close to about when it came out. I want to say it was the summer or fall or spring, somewhere around there, but we'll find out for sure. Like I said, I just want to, just touch on it real quick. So these are the issues here. You had Uncanny X-Men 225 through 227. Claremont on it, of course. The best thing is all 3 issues are done by Mark Silvestri, and some of his best stuff, in my opinion. We had New Mutants 59 through 61, Louise Simonson writing, and Brett Blevins on the art, and some of his best stuff that I really like. X-Factor, Louise was writing that as well, with her husband doing the art, Walt Simonson. Again, I'm not a huge Walt Simonson fan, but he's kind of what made that comic popular, especially with the advent of Apocalypse, throwing him in there. I haven't looked exactly. I think Apocalypse, I'm assuming it's a Louise and Walter collaboration together, husband-wife duo. Chris Claremont probably, because he was talking with them pretty, closely, and so Ann Nocenti was editing 2 of the titles as well, and of course Bob Harris, who I believe was editor-in-chief at the time. Maybe not. Maybe it was still Jim Shooter. I can't remember. But I know Bob Harris took over for Jim Shooter after Jim Shooter left. But I know these all 4 of these individuals, maybe Mark Silvestri to some extent, but definitely, or Brett Blevins, but definitely Claremont, Ann Nocenti, Louise Simonson, and I guess Walters to some extent, and they're pretty closely knit in talking about this and kind of created it all together collectively. There's a really good interview on YouTube. You look it up. It's got the 3 of them, Nocenti, Simonson, Louise Simonson, and Claremont. And they talk about this whole period. And it's really interesting to listen to them talk about it. But I said one of the first big crossovers, one that really caught my attention at the time. I loved X-Men at this time. So, and of course X Factor was still pretty much still on, even though I didn't really like the Simonson art as he took over for the other guy, but I was still collecting X Factor at this time. So, and like I said, New Mutants I was hit or miss. I did get these issues because it was part of that. And I think when I saw Brett Blevins' art, I think I kind of got keyed into it and started to collect it more so. And then they talk about front covers by Alan Davis and Paul Neary. Neary's a great artist in and to himself, so of course him inking Davis's work. And Javier Rodriguez I'm not overly familiar with. Dan Green, of course, inking Mark Silvestri, that was common. I mean, Dan Green, I know Terry Austin for the most part inked Cockrum and I believe Smith, but definitely John Byrne on his X-Men. I think Dan Green might have started with Paul Smith, or probably started with either Paul Smith or John Romita Jr., and then of course he just kind of continued on with Mark Silvestri. He took over the book. The other guy, Chris Sotomayor, or Sotomayor, how do you say his name? Back cover artist. I'm not overly. I'm assuming these are colorists, most likely. Yeah, and of course, X-Men created by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby is kind of a given. But anyway, so let's kind of dive into it. I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to leave this open, but I'm going to get out of here and I'm going to go to the issues themselves of Fall of the Mutants. But obviously it's starting here at X-Men 225. And this was January of 87. So it was right as, first thing 87. Boom, right off the bat, you hit with Fall of the Mutants. Like I said, the specific time, let's just hypothetically say this came out the first week of January, which it probably didn't. It either came out the end of December or it was a couple of weeks after the first. But let's just say hypothetically it came out at that time. That means that this comic was the comic of the month when I did the switch over from West Junior High to Ruther Junior High. That's when I met, one of my longtime friends at that, first day of Ruther in the office, because he was also his first day as well. He transferred from a school down in Warren. And we got to talking about comics right off the bat. So this, let's just say hypothetically, this came out that month. This was the Uncanny X-Men of the month. And I know, we probably had a conversation about this most likely. I mean, I know we had a bunch of conversations. We were kind of stuck in that office for a while until we got our classes assigned. And also we both were artists, we both drew this stuff, so we both wanted creative design, creative art together. And Mrs. Kress was the teacher at the time. Mr. Spitzer, my art teacher at West, he actually I told him that I was transferring, and he knew I was transferring, and he said that Mrs. Kress was a pretty cool teacher. She really was into graphic design and photography, and she kind of went that angle. And she was also very much about drawing from photographs, where everybody else was kind of drawing from life. And so there's just kind of a little backup, or a little heads up to what was going on with me personally at that time. So this comic comes out, and I'm going to bounce back to this, so I'm going to leave it open. Let's go forward, and then I'm going to switch over. I'll keep this open, and I'll open a separate one. Yeah. Oh, actually, they're right there. If you can see it, I think I can blow this up. I can't remember which blow is. There it goes. Yeah, there's the image itself, raw, without any graphics. Actually, this is the original image. Okay, so this is the original image here on the left. Of course, my picture's in the way. Let me move me for a little bit here. Alright, so you've got on the left the poster that came out. This is what was out, which caught my attention. Where I think I saw this? Kay put this in her window facing out towards the parking lot, so that people knew she had comics. I think that's where... Well, I don't know if I discovered Kay yet by that time. I don't know where this was. I think she eventually had this poster and put it out there when we did end up going there. But I know she put some posters in her front window so people knew she had comics. I think it said comics. She wrote on there with like tape. But it must have been one of the bookstores, whether it was Rochester Book Center or Fireside, had this poster up. And they would put theirs out in their windows too as well sometimes. That or it was just in the store. It probably was in Troy Stamp and Coin, but like I said, I was kind of sick of them by this time. And then, of course, I guess this is the color. So this is what they used for the cover. They had it recolored digitally, obviously, because this background is definitely a digital background done with paint. And then the image itself. So obviously, same thing with this original background. This is all color separated. So the inking would have stopped there at the horizon line, and pretty effective way. Very minimalist way to use background, and very effective. Very effective. I mean, you really, a lot of these amorphous blobs kind of spill out, and then you start seeing like the New Mutants and stuff, and then the characters in the foreground. But nothing really. Some ground, just some dribbles of ink to denote ground, and then this all done in color, and then the color choices they used, the purple and the red and the yellow. And I mean, that's really, really nice with the big red sun. And I put the Fall of the Mutants right over the sun like that. That's really nice. And of course down here you have the 3 different titles, starting in September from Marvel. Okay, now so I know X-Men was the first one. At least because it's in the first. They put it first in milestones. So it's September. I can't think they'd be that far off. Meaning that if, let's say, this hypothetically came out in September of 86, and they had a cover date of January 87. I don't think it was that far off. I mean, on the flip side, and I don't think it was 2000. I mean, even though I didn't look at the cover, because sometimes if you look at those covers, they don't. If it says like 1986, it's technically a 1987 book because that cover was produced or was generated in 86. It was also right around the turn of the year. I'll have to do some digging to find out exactly when that came out. I'm curious myself to know. But I'm just going to go under the assumption that this was January 1987. I might just be over-romanticizing that, but let's just say, for argument's sake, that's what the situation was. And then let me flip. Okay, now let me go back to full size. I know there's a button to do that, but... I use the same CBR viewer on my tablet, which is right here. Oh, you can't see me. My tablet here. This is what I use. It's my main tablet, obviously, but this is what I read all my comics on. I just store it on an SD card inside there. I put the whole collection on there. Incidentally, I am starting to read. Kind of going through and reading brand new comics right now, starting with last week. I think it was the 21st. The comics that dumped on the 21st. I'm going kind of through and reading a few things because I was drawn to a few things. The World's Finest was one I was drawn to because I like the artwork, and I like the fact that they had Wonder Woman back in her original costume, or her costume people were most known for, not the Gal Gadot costume. That's kind of what caught my eye, so I started reading that one. And then I read a couple of Marvels at the time, because I think the one Avengers comic caught my eye, and I read that one. But where were we at here? So I'm just going to fast forward this past the X. Okay, there, as you can see, there's the New Mutants comics. So it should start out with New Mutants in 15. Okay, let's leave that there, and then let's go to back here. Now this is all in 1980 through 1989 as far as CBRs. So we are going to Fall of the Mutants, which should start here. Okay. So let's pull this one up. And we're going to go here. So, okay. So right off the bat, cover great. I love it. You got Rogue was kind of transitioning between her 85 costume. Still had the black bodysuit, but they kind of did like these, bottoms here, which is essentially just a thong, this tank top, gloves, and these type of like more swashbuckler boots, or buccaneer boots, or what I want to call them. And then she kind of morphed into what became the Down Under costume from here. But I liked this transition. I thought this was interesting. It really shows off, the character really well. Spiral's kind of weird. They put her in the yellow there. I think that's Stone. What's his name? Stone. Stone something. Stonewall, I think is the name of the character. Yeah. And of course, this is Freedom Force. So let's get into it. It kind of, I'm also not going to do a play-by-play. And again, spoiler alert, I think is the statute of limitations, as I say on spoiler alerts, is past since this is well over 30 years old. If you're reading this because you're aware of X-Men or excessively aware of Fall of the Mutants, you've probably already read this issue, so I shouldn't be giving too much away. And like I said, I'm not going to get really in depth with the story. For another reason is I'm kind of going in cold here. Last time I read Fall of the Mutants, I want to say is about 6 months ago, maybe a year ago. So I'm not fresh at the moment. I'm going to probably forget a lot of things. The older I get, I just cannot keep the amount of information in my head at one time. So I'm going a little cold here. That wasn't intentional, just kind of the way it happened. Okay, so starts out, you got, I just thought it was cool. You had, what's his face? Peter drawing in the sketchbook here, which is Colossus. These kids are watching him. And then it kind of goes into, Colossus is out, yada, yada, yada. Roma, I don't know if this is the first appearance of Roma, maybe, but she was a big figure in this. I loved this panel with the X-Men, the Wanted poster. The only thing that was strange is Colossus isn't on there, but I think, if I remember, that's why Colossus finds this, and he's not on the poster. I think he's searching, I can't, like I said, I can't remember exactly what happens. I believe he's searching for them, or what was happening. Juggernaut was here, that was funny. But I really liked the look of Rogue there without the bottoms, just the all-black suit with the shorter boots. And I know I obsess about Rogue, but she's one of my favorite characters, so of course I'm going to obsess about her costume an awful lot. Yeah, it's starting to come back to me now a little bit. I remember her sister, Rogue's flying here. I believe. Okay, so I know they're at, this is Forge's, I can't remember what the name of his building is. And I think Storm was with him at the time. I think they're looking for Storm. I can't remember. But they're outside of it. And then the Freedom Force shows up. And of course the Freedom Force shows up with the press, and their whole thing is, they're gonna apprehend these out of control mutants. Longshot and Dazzler and Psylocke run team, as well as Havoc. Like I said, this is essentially the Down Under team. So I would say it kind of formed right before this comic. But I want to say that this is like the first big event with that new team, and it has always been my favorite X-Men team. I liked it better than the original. I liked it better than the 70s. Even with Shadowcat, I think this is my all-time favorite. I like Havoc better than I like Scott Summers. I like Psylocke, especially in this outfit, or even the armored outfit's fine. I like Dazzler in that outfit. A lot of it, for me, comes down to aesthetics, what people look like. Such a great panel there with Havoc doing his blast. Rogue flying there, great stuff. Yeah, there's Stonewall there. I love this, too. You really get the weight of the art in this, where they bounce off of him, and, like, Rogue is, she's flying pretty hard. Wolverine's biting the dust in the foreground. Long shot. He's always lucky. He's going to land on his feet. So he lands on his feet. That subtle, subtext in that storytelling is just awesome, visually. I mean, this is essentially, these comics, they kind of are a little boring story-wise, because almost all 3 issues, and the third one being a double-sized 48-pager, or 40-some pager, is just them fighting Freedom Force outside of this building. For the most part, that's the whole story. And to stretch that on for 3 issues to essentially 4 issues, if you think about the double issue, seems like it'd be boring and repetitive, and it kind of can get that way. But like I said, if you really pay attention to the subtleties and the subtext in the storytelling by Silvestri, visual storytelling, it's very interesting. It's just amazing work. Masterclass. There's a great scene where Blob lands on Wolverine. Blob can't be moved. He's sitting on Wolverine. Obviously, Wolverine's not dead because he's Wolverine. Adamantium skull, not going to do anything. And then, of course, you get the, they show up. Talking to Rogue. I like this profile of Rogue. You know, he what's his face too? Sylvester really, especially the women, he really does this kind of posing where they're kind of, I essentially know what that looks like, but the thing is, but the way he does the posing, he kind of always does this kind of, I guess it would be an S kind of posing. The hips are out, knees are up, back, shoulders back. He kind of does this a lot, especially in like scenes, even when they're just standing. He does that a lot. It's appealing for obvious reasons. Psylocke tries to take a whack at him with her mental powers. He sweats it out a little bit, but he, trying to get Blob off of Wolverine. And then, see, look at the way he draws the hips and all that stuff. I mean, it's got a very realistic look to it, even though it's cartooning. Here we go. Schnicked! You can only know what that means. Boom! Wolverine will get him off of him pretty quick. So he flies off, and then Colossus finally shows up, kind of takes a whack at him. They're kind of full force now, so they're going to be hard to stop. Is this when Storm shows up? Oh, no, that's right. It's not Storm, it's Mystique. I got fooled, too. But yeah, so that was the first issue. We'll go to the second issue. Said I should run through these pretty quick. But we're at 21 minutes. Okay. So issue 227, March. Again, we're assuming it's March and this comes out. So me and my friend are definitely conversing about this comic at the time. Which also, I'm very nostalgic for that time. It's a very memorable part of my life, so it does play into my affection for this, specifically this comic here, this series. Yes, a lot of double-page spreads. This PDF's not split, or is it split? No, they don't have a split PDF. They do a double-page spread here. Nice thing about like Jim Lee continued that too. I'm not a huge Jim Lee fan, but he continued that double-page spread a lot where it's double-page spread followed by panels underneath. I like that. Obviously, that have to be done. Here's their first page. That has to be done on the second and third page to pull that off. Excuse me. Rogue's costume's taking a beating. She usually loses most of that bodysuit by the end of a fight. Obviously it's going to stretch. It's just going to tear. Madeline Pryor. I believe that's Forge there, right? I can't remember. No, I can't see his leg. It's missing a leg. He's Forge. Looks like Forge. Roma. Again, I need to go back and read this again and find out like I said, all I've got is fragments at this point. I used to know it really well, like the back of my hand really well. But I'm kind of slipping on that. The older I get, it just happens. Let's see what's going on here. Rogue's doing some kissing, stealing those powers. Great. I believe is that a Brood? I can't remember. I don't think Brood shows up yet. Yet, meaning that eventually it is. Oh, I think okay, Forge, I know Forge and Storm were hanging out at the time. I think that's the real Storm that comes out. There's Kitty Pryde. I believe she's she's back at the, we're with the New Mutants at the New Mutants hideout, which is the Xavier, I can't remember. Did they stay at the Charles Xavier mansion, or did they have their own place when Magneto's leading them? I think they were at the Xavier mansion, because I know Magneto, Xavier's gone right now. He's in the, with the Shi'ar Empire at this moment with Lilandra, but I think that's what it is. I just don't remember the water behind the mansion. I thought there was like a basketball court and just trees. But anyway, little minutia. Great use of color and ink there. That head is really elongated, but that's fine. That's fine. You can't. one thing is true, even a master, you can't knock it out of the park every panel. It's just impossible. You know, I mean, this Roma here in the foreground looks a little phoned in too. But you know, you're doing a monthly book. Sometimes they're doing they're doing 3 monthly books, which I find impossible. But you know, you can't knock it out of the park with every panel. You're going to have some panels that are phoned in or flubbed. It's just going to happen. It's the end of this issue. Let's go to 28 here. Oh wait, no wait, what did I went to the Leonardi issue. Did I skip an issue? Which one did I go to? Is that the end of it? I did these out of order. I'm sorry. These out of order. Like I said, I'm not really trying to tell you the story. I'm just kind of showing you, you know, some of the art and just some of my you know, some of my not criticisms, but just my reactions to some of these panels. You know, obviously not getting my first reaction, you're getting years and years of looking at these pages. But yeah, there's Storm. Okay, yeah, she's with Forge. I remember this now. Okay. I believe they're in the Savage Lands, I think. Aren't they? You know, I can't remember on that one either. Or they're in a different dimension. You know, I really have to go back and read this. You know, that's one thing I thought was cool he did is Mystique, he would just do the blue for the face, and he would do black silhouetting. He loved to do the black silhouetting. I mean, it is a cheat. I mean, it is a shortcut to not have, especially with Fabric, is, you know, you don't have to draw all that stuff. You have to lay down the pencil drawing of a figure pretty well, but you can kind of cheat and flub it a lot. You know, there's no rim lighting there. You know, like you would do like Black Spider-Man, or a character like that. So, you know, and he did it a lot with Rogue. But it looks, it's got a look to it. It looks nice. And if you don't have a lot of heavy blacks on your page, and that becomes one of your heavy blacks, that also draws your eye right to that. At least I think so. Again, you know, my assessment of this comic book art, you know, it is subjective. You know, I mean, I draw my eye to stuff more so than other people, but I think there are still some fundamentals that you can objectively look at this art, and we can all agree that that's what it is. But you know, there's a good panel, him grabbing the spiral. Yeah. Or she has a flashback there. Is that one the... Yeah, that's something else. Okay. What's going on here? I like that. She's a little... Torso's a little too thin and long, but again, you know... And here you go. So look at this. Look at the way her costume is, right? You're leaving, like, you know, the bottoms of her costume is just open space. It's just positive space. Or actually, sorry, that would be the negative space. This would be your positive space. You know, drawn in here with the black. And then, you know, then her boots and stuff. So, I mean, you can really, you know, shorthand quick throwing these down. I mean, I could imagine when he's drawing these, he's not laboring over these for very long. But he's throwing this stuff in quick. You know, he's probably, maybe he's sketching that out in the sketchbook and then light boxes it through to the paper, the bristle. I don't know, you know. Yeah. And, you know, so so here we go. Another good example. So the blacks of her costume create blacks, and then the blacks of his costume create blacks. You know, and you get some blacks here. So, like I said, it's all, balancing your blacks is tricky, and if you could do it creatively, you know, that comes out really. It looks really nice. He's a little too. That's panels a little. See, some of these panels are a little too sketchy. Not sketchy, but they're a little too loose. You know, you got to tighten up that face again. But again, you know, it is what it is, and it effectively does its job, and it still has style, and you know, and it made the comic popular. This was one of the comics that made X-Men in the 80s popular. You know, obviously Byrne had a lot to do with that in the beginning. You know, and even John Romita Jr. But this is just what comic would solidify. Okay, so I did do that out of order. I'm sorry. Um, Again, like I said, I wasn't trying to give you a, start to finish on the story, but those are your 3 Fall of the Mutants comics. I love them. I still think they hold up to this day. I had read them about 5 years ago again, or maybe 4 years ago, and I felt iffy on it. I was kind of like, I don't know if they hold up today, and it seems very. The story just seemed kind of like draggy and laggy, and I wasn't feeling it, right? Maybe it's just how my mindset at the time, and I thought to myself, maybe some of these 80s comics and some of these ones with the X-Men, maybe they're falling apart. Maybe they're losing their luster. And then I ended up going over it again, reading it again, and I was jiving with it. I was, I guess this happens with every songs. You listen to a song, you're like, maybe I'm not feeling this song. Maybe I'm not feeling this album at this particular point in my life. And then you come back full circle. I think with anything, if you come back to something, and you come back to it multiple times, that definitely means that you have a passion for it, or you have, it's a deep, inner love for something, whether it's a hobby, whether it's something like this, music, let's say guitar or playing music in general. Maybe maybe there's a point in your life where you're kind of distant, you're away from it, and then you come back to it. I've found that no matter whatever direction I take, whatever I get into, I still come back to step 4. I still come back to some core fundamentals. Here, I'll pull this. You can hear me talk. You can see my sort of sunburned face. I had to go to a 4th of July carnival and with my son, and I got a lot of sun, so not too bad. I just got my face and my arms kind of got burnt, but that's okay. I need some color for the summer. What was I saying? Oh yeah. So like I said, if you come back to something, or you're distant on something, I think there's a Yes documentary, if you know the band Yes, and I think Rick Wakeman is talking about his relationship with John Anderson, and when they did the album, this is like late 70s, mid-late 70s, when they did the album Tales of Topographic Oceans. I'm probably speaking Greek to a lot of people, but they did this album, and the singer and the keyboard player who were doing a lot of the main arrangements, he said he had the analogy of an oval egg, meaning that, you start out together at this point of the egg, and as you go through the oval, there's a point where you're going to be as far away as humanly possible, as far as creatively or ideologically, and that, he said that, he was like, no, none of us were clever or astute enough to realize that, would come back together when they did this album, Going for the One, which is a great album. And I think about that too when it comes to like your interests and your passions. There's a point where it's probably when you first got into something, whether it's comic books, first time you picked up a guitar, or drums or whatever, music stuff. Maybe it's sports, first time you played hockey, picked up a stick and hit the ice, hit the pond with some kids. There's going to be a point where you're with whatever your love is, that's where you're at. And then there's a point as you grow in life where you're probably going to drift apart from it. It's like, I really wish I could, get back on the ice, and skate. Or maybe I could, I should dust the guitar off out of its case. It's been sitting in the closet for years, something like that. And then there's a point where you come back together with it. And no matter how many times you drift apart from something, I think if you come back to it almost every time, it might be at a point where you are far away from something, but inevitably if you come back to it, then I would say if you do that more than once, if not even just once, it's a deep love of something, a passion for something. And I find that way with comics in general, but specifically different periods of comics. And then specific issues even, there's a point where you're like, well, yeah, and then yeah, you're hot and cold on stuff. And I don't think that speaks to the quality of the whatever's in hand. I think that just it's you personally. Because if it was bad quality stuff, you probably never would have been at that original point at any time in your life. You wouldn't have taken to it. So you wouldn't even have taken that journey. I know I'm getting kind of hippy dippy and stuff, but I find that way with these comics too. Like I said, and like I said, currently at this moment, I cannot remember exactly what happens in Fall of the Mutants, although I read it so many times. So I've got to go back again. I'm not here right now. I'm not far away from it. I got so much on my mind lately. It's hard to keep all this stuff straight. But yeah, and the problem with, you read a book series, whether it's Lord of the Rings, Harry Potter, whatever, if you're really into it, you're probably going to remember a lot of that story, because even if it's a big body of work, it's still a self-contained thing. You got to think comics has grown and the stories have changed and different storylines over, if you're going to take Marvel comics or like the X-Men, for me, this X-Men, the new X-Men, 1975, now we're on 1987, so it's done all kinds of things up to this point. Now you got to imagine into the 90s with the Jim Lee stuff, into the 2000s, with like the Josh Whedon stuff, then the movies. There's just so much material and so much, source material for these characters and these stories that it's hard to keep track of them all. You almost have to create a timeline or write this stuff down constantly to remind yourself of it. But I think I've babbled on for long enough for today, so we're going to make today a little bit of a short one. But, give me just a few minutes. Let's go back into the milestone. We'll just go out. We're just going to touch on the other books real quick. So here is the Fall of the Mutants. This is 59, again, January, so I'm assuming this all started in January. Blevins art. Blevins, he does a very cartoony look with the New Mutants. Almost, very cartoony, very. And I don't know if he influenced Arthur Adams, or Arthur Adams influenced Blevins, but I think they're all kind of synonymous at this time, doing this kind of very cartoony art. At times I find it kind of off-putting, and at times I find it very fun. It just depends on the mood I'm in. I think he makes Danny, my favorite character, Danny look pretty good. And Wolfsbane, he makes look really young. I know she's supposed to be young. He makes her look really young, which is fine. And the guys, the kids, the boys, they look like they're in their, mid to late teens. So they all kind of look right here. And of course it's supposed to be more whimsical and funny. Not funny, but it's supposed to be more fun. So, and it's definitely more lighthearted than a comic like the X-Men, because they're supposed to be younger characters, and it's hard to do a really serious, deep story. You can do it with young kids. I know that movie that they did where they kind of made it a horror movie, but they still had like a light kind of teen thing going on. I think they were kind of go for like an 80s teen horror slasher film kind of thing. That movie. It was okay. I didn't hate it. It wasn't great either. But yeah, and of course characters like, what's his face, Warlock, he's gonna bring a certain feel to a story with his zaniness. And of course, Blevins does a great job. That's a great job drawing of him running up the stairs there. And then Arthur Adams doing him a lot, like in the special and stuff like that, in some of the annuals. I'm not a huge fan of how Blevins does Magneto. I think he looks a little odd. The kids he does great, but and then of course all the monsters and weird kind of strange characters are. Can you guys see this? Oh, I'm sorry, you can't even see what I'm looking at. Going through all this stuff all this time. I need a technical director is what I need. I need an editor, I need an inker, I need a colorist, I need a technical director. I need to employ an entire company of people. But you know what? The coffers aren't to that point yet. So you could help. You could make that happen. Just keep watching this. Tell all your friends. Spread the word. Let's build the channel up. But you're going to get better videos, because you're not just going to get me sitting here with trying to do everything myself. So yeah, so assume that you knew what I was talking about when I was started talking about the New Mutants. That S, that kind of snaky posing too. So my eye just goes right to it, obviously. Um, yeah, so we're into New Mutants, issue 60, February. I have not read these in a while, so I could not tell you exactly what's going on in the story. What this isn't my. Again, I'm not going to go through this as much as I did the X-Men, but this was not my. Even back in the day, it wasn't one I focused heavily on. Although at this point right now, I actually am. This art's appealing to me. Oh yeah, those guys. So yeah, you have this going on. But yeah, and then of course 61 wraps that up. There's that. Remember I was talking to me. I don't think you could see on the screen at the time, but I don't really like the way that Blevins does Magneto. Just looks weird. The kids look good. Danny, yeah, there's Danny there. There, she looks. Her head's a little too big there. Her body's way too small there. I think Blevins likes Danny too, for obvious reasons. But yeah, it's good art. It's very very fun and it's something that a teenager more likes. A younger teenager around there, they would like this. Some of them are really drawn weird proportions, but that's Blevins for you. Okay, so we're going to get an X Factor. So we're going to get a total mood change as far as comic art with Simonson. Like I said, I'm not a huge fan of his art. I'm not to say it's bad, and I obviously can't say it's bad. I think it is still done masterful. I'm just not a fan of it. And yeah, I remember that. Okay, so again, I'm not going to really get into the story much, but this is the comic that made that pack of the whole thing worth a lot of money. Yeah, see, I don't like the way he draws Jean's face. I don't like the way he draws her body very much. The guys look fine for the most part. I think they're a little too loose. Because I was like looking at the ladies, I always gauge how well an artist is on how well he draws women, and then of course for guys, I think how well he draws faces and musculature and the figure on the guys too. Like I said, I really like when they draw a thick, big dude, but he's not like a giant, hulking mass of muscles with a tiny pinhead, like they did in the 90s. I like it looks like a heavy guy. Like right here, he looks like a heavy guy. He's not, he's tall. He's probably like 8 feet tall here, and he looks heavy. He's got muscles, and he's got big hands, big feet. He looks like he's heavy. He doesn't look like he's not just a big ball of goofiness. A little long there, but still the same thing. Great drawing of Archangel there. Like I said, he's got his strengths. Walt Simonson, I don't totally dislike him. I just find it a little off-putting. I guess a little cheeky with her there. Normally he draws that pretty angular. And this is still my favorite costume with her, is the green and yellow. Before she goes to the red and yellow. I just think with the red and then the red hair is too much red. I like the green. Green and red they're complementary colors, so of course they look great together. What are we at here? Okay, now we should start wrapping it up, right? Which is coming to the end here. That's what I'm saying. See, just a little, not right. Yeah. So, and then we get to that last issue, issue 26. We just want to see if there's anything towards the end. No, they don't really do anything as far as the poster or anything. That was kind of in the beginning. All right, so let's stop that, and then tomorrow I don't know what I'm going to do. Kind of like I said, I'm trying to stagger these between a comics issue or comics episode, an action figure episode. I'm in the course of kind of redesigning my room, kind of removing things around, so I might come across something that I want to talk about. That type of thing. I'm trying to put things together in different spots, trying to make room, trying to, it's a never-ending it's always a work in progress. My room, trying to get it how I want it. But for the most part, everything's got its place. So let's stop there and pick it back up tomorrow. Okay. Talk to you then. Bye-bye.